I recently found out that Alpha Protocol had been delisted from Steam. Not for any exciting reason, just because the music rights had expired. I am an elite espionage agent. I cannot be killed by conventional weapons. Oh no, not the music rights! And because my Steam library is as old as time itself, I have a copy in there. It's a game I've tried to play a few times and not really succeeded, and it has a bit of a mixed reputation, so I thought I'd give it another go. I mean, it's Obsidian, right? And my tastes have deepened since 2010. This'll be fine, right? Right? The game is clearly dated, and not just in its control system and graphics, but in the way the enemies are initially Islamic fundamentalists, because now we're at war with Eurasia. However, the actual game itself doesn't feel that dated. You're a spy and you can do missions stealthily or go loud with guns. Well, sometimes you have the choice. You gain XP and level up. You have branching paths in conversations, and people's opinions of you change depending on what you said. If you're sat there thinking, so what, most games are like that? Well, yeah, they are. Now. They weren't in 2010. When this came out, it was a fairly revolutionary idea. Mass Effect, but James Bond. But does it work? Well, the short answer is meh, and the long answer is meh. The game doesn't do itself any favours by starting badly. The initial mission, where it's essentially the tutorial, isn't exactly fantastic. And then after that, when you go to Saudi Arabia, we run into, shall we say, some balance issues. If you've built your character into the ultimate stealth monster, well, as ultimate as you can get in the early game, then when it comes to the area where you have no option but to shoot your way out and attempt to blow up a tank, well, you can imagine. This was the point where I always used to want to quit out and never return on previous plays. However, I'd remembered all this and put it on easy mode, so it was manageable. Yay for easy modes! You could argue that this is the game teaching you that you can very much break your build and you have to keep combat in mind. But I would argue that's a bollocks way to do things. You gave me all these options, let me play this game how the hell I want to. This isn't the 90s anymore. This is undoubtedly one of the game's biggest screw-ups. Well, apart from the phenomenally bad combat system, because after this it starts to deliver on some of its promise as an espionage simulator, with you mining people for info, making decisions that actually affect the flipping game for once, befriending or pissing off factions. I mean, sure, the character's a bit guff, the plot's a bit guff, and the gameplay's, well, guff? I think it's like those bad 80s sci-fi movies where they shoot for the moon, but end up in Wisconsin. They had an idea, they had a dream, but they didn't really have the skills to actually make it properly. So you kind of end up with a mess that doesn't really work, but it's full of heart. Okay, so let's talk about the combat system. If you ever make a game and are wondering how to do a combat system that scales with XP, look at this as an example of how not to do it. So you aim, then wait about a week for the circle to get smaller, then fire. You can improve this by putting points into guns, but really, someone who's got into Ultimate Agent Bureau should not be worse at shooting than a stormtrooper who's down 3 bottles of Smirnoff. There are better ways to do this. It got to the point that sometimes in the middle of a firefight I'd resort to punching someone out because it was actually more effective. Then we get the stealth system, which isn't much better. While you're undetected, it works perfectly fine. Standard stealth really, but once you're detected, oh boy, everyone knows where you are. Not only that, but if you sneak where nobody can see you and try to get to a point where they can't detect you anymore, tough. They still know where you are. I sneaked all the way to the back of a warehouse and nobody followed me. They were all shooting at the front, so I come out, hoping to sneak out and wait. But as soon as I came out the back, they started firing at where I was. Bar, I say. Bar! As I alluded to earlier, the boss fights are utterly broken. Even on easy modes, there are ones that feel unbeatable if you have a stealth build. It suffers the way the first version of Deus Ex Human Revolution did, but more so. Much more so. In fact, I'd say with the combat system this bad, you shouldn't really have boss fights. I was having trouble with the boss in Russia, and by trouble I mean so I looked on the internet, and if you do Taipei first, you can mess with his coke that he snorts. Right, so sod it. I load an old save and do Taipei instead, go through all that, and then back to Russia and yay! But there's no way I would have known that. Also, let's just give that boss some appreciation for a minute. He's a Russian guy obsessed with the 80s, and this is played for the cringe factor. However, what they didn't know is just a few years later. So yeah, these days, this guy running at you gold machine guns, snorting coke and listening to this actually looks pretty awesome. While it's not been made public which track expires, I'm gonna guess it's this one. And imagine re-upping a track that was supposed to be cringe in 2010 but wasn't in 2019 wasn't gonna happen. And because the game sold like soggy toilet paper, it wasn't going to be worth the effort to replace it. And they're not wrong. Having now finally completed the game, the plot was a bit dull and mostly told in flashback, which is just the laziest way to tell a story. And yet, I did stick it out and finish it. I don't know, it just feels like with some tweaks here and there, this could have been a winner. But as it is, it's basically a bad 80s movie that doesn't work. But somehow, you get some enjoyment out of it, or at least I did. At least next time I see this in my library, I'll know I've actually finished it and won't ever have to play it again. Have a lovely day.